we got some letters. Which one do we go for? Go for the one right in the middle. To you that reads this letter, I do hope that you can make sense of the absurdities that I witnessed, the breathless cries of mothers departed, the empty cradles that sway without breeze nor touch. There will be no midwife who toil this mortal plane, whom would not tremble bearing witness to the umbilical specters of the Svagnumhith Manor birthing ward. Even as I write this message, bloody palmed, cold sweats grip me as I picture their ever-twisting visage. If there be a heaven, God quivers behind an empty throne, cursing the foulness of his creation, of birth and unspeakable wretchedness that strikes terror into the hearts of the angels and hell's most loathsome demons alike, torn organs given phantom form, spectral possessions, wrathful intention given form, conjured by the unborn, lost the cruelty of nature's uncaring whim, calcified, ill-fated fetal matter of an ectoplasmic nature, cursed to linger for eternity the 9 realms of the living. How can the unborn cleanse themselves of unfinished business when they know not of life? What of the ambitions of the womb? Do they cry out for the gentle touch of the mother never met? I watch on in terror as new mothers, mouth agape, were torn limb from limb by the uncaring will of pulsating tangled organic masses that wailed an indescribable babbling child's tongue. Walls bled into shadowy womb-like fleshscapes, and the many corridors of the birthing ward heaved with a raging torrent of umbilical fluid, pulsating furniture and bodies as it engulfed. Yeah. Oh, pulverizing. You got me while I was saying pulsating mass. I see what you did. The manor. I slipped on the dark liquid as I fled, cracking my skull against a solid wooden bed frame. When I awoke, head spinning, bleary-eyed, I saw only carnage, blood pooled on the crudely varnished flooring, broken forms laid scattered amongst splintered antiques, pierced bodies lacerated by shards of decimated medical equipment. I could only scream. Which is, we select that middle one, so let's go for the top. My dearest Jude, I implore you, do not seek my location, no matter how heavy the emotional toll of one's mind. You must delve deep within oneself and obliterate the memories of our past, expunge your being of our fluttering moments together on this mortal plane. In time, the merest thought of me will usher only pain. These blistered hands cannot do one's actions. I look back upon my time and am sickened by the deeply calloused nature and ease of one's atrocities. To think that the very cement and rusted trowel of one's profession would cast them into the muddled depths of deeds beyond repentance. I still hear the blood-curdling screams, the cold twang of metal scraping upon brick as I sealed their fates. I can never unmake that wall, nor take back the prolonged harrowing agony inflicted by that architectural abomination. The muffled pounding of broken fists against stone still haunts my ever-waking moment. No matter the actions of future selves, I cannot silence nor escape the sins of mine. To think all that took to drive me to such measures was the shimmering gleam of riches untold and the cold promise of stranger's coin. How I yearn for the return to simple days of past, that predictable mundanity of contractual bricklaying, the beating smog-riddled heart of the city. For all my petty grumblings and pleas for escapism, those moments embroiled in everyday labor were my finest. Redemption shall forever elude me. I am not deserving of such deeds, as my body is cast into the cold soils, and my soul leaves this wretched plane. I know that only the smoldering wails of the hell await me. Alright, so there's 4 letters left. 'Cause there's 4 letters left. 'Cause 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 'C Dear Victor, I'm retching as I write this. The Durnswood moss pustule fungal spores have ravaged my esophagus. There's your pulsating whilst they persistently swell within me, causing me to agonizingly heave as I pitifully gasp for some fleeting semblance of breath. It's slow, prolonged vomiting motion of sorts, the moist barbs of the fungus root tendrils gruelingly clawing at the gullet nerves in my reverse act of digestion. Apologies for the damp globules of spittle I've heaved into the dull, cream-colored confines of this crinkled postcard. To expel these fall, crimson blooms once and for all would be an act of euphoric bliss beyond the realms of comprehension. How I crave the giddying notion of sensory normality. The end nears. Through blurred visions of shadowy specters of death linger in silence, set against the darkness of the peripheral void as I callously lust for the rasping sigh of my final breath. I've marked a spot in the damp undergrowth of the gloom-stricken woods as I lay behind my cabin. It is here I ask you to bury me. As my limited time on this mortal plane falters, I feel only the pain of the fleshy gills unfurling as they seep down my trachea to engulf what little lung capacity remains. By the time you find me, I will have passed. I simply pray that the cruel visage of crude fungal twisted decomposition inevitably consuming my form will fade with haste from your memory and scar not your future dreamscapes. Who knew that lifelong passion for foraging would be my undoing? Curse the spiteful hand fate has dealt me. Were I not merely a feeble creature of this earth, I'd cast these cards aside and spit daggers into the face of this uncaring god. I'd trade all those fleeting moments of joy and merriment spent feasting on my wild harvest for a future in which I've met my grandchildren. I speak of you. Speak only of my life and sporadic deeds of kindness, not of the impending atrocity of the departure I've ill-fatally carved out for myself. Yours, Dad. So once I've done this, and this. This then? To the Commissioner General of the Icelandic Department of Mystery, I'm writing you to inform you of the most peculiar study, the putrid enigma of mole-grabbed strand, tide pool fetus chamber. After receiving a deeply unsettling anonymous tip in the early hours of the morning, I gathered together my investigative tools and set out into the jaws of this winter's freezing gaze to witness an aforementioned phenomenon myself. Upon arrival of the bleak ice-swept location, I could sense the air of a deep wrongdoing. A shivering jolt ricocheted down my spine, prompting a cold sweat as I slowly trudged through the length of the overcast, rain-soaked shoreline, accompanied by sounds of brittle crunches of 1,000 bleached shell fragments washed ashore by recent storms. I drew close to the harsh, gray mass of the jagged slate-tide pool, snagging my beige trousers and scraping thin ribbons into the exposed leg flesh as I clambered over the mollusk, straying. Wow, these are. This is actually kind of difficult to read because of. I mean, it's definitely not a natural, like, current vernacular, so. The exposed leg flesh as I clambered over the mollusk strangled maw-like blades of the harsh, slippery terrain, skin raw and weeping crimson, droplets of blood into the salt-heavy pools below. I finally scaled the last of the uneven masses, grazing down in horror upon the ungodly visage of the fetus chamber. The spectacle pulsating mass of a womb-like mucus engulfing the 5-meter craggy basin. Within the dark maroon depths, submerged just below the slime-filmed surface, a thrashing swarm of malformed embryos spiraling the liquid in a jarred, almost ritualistic motion. This grim parade of convulsing organic matter, frantically squelching as they blew pus bubbles from torn holes with a twisted resemblance of a human mouth. A nightmare-inducing communion of entities. the child spawn of vast ocean deep, each of the bustling creatures a gill-clad humanoid. Fetus, sporting crude webbing, protruding spinal matter, and multiple rows of razor-sharp needle-like teeth, with empty sunken eye sockets and dark, inky vision globes callously strewn around the remainder of the facial ligaments. Sickening. Furious, cursing the very existence of this ungodly, twisted abomination, I leapt down from my perch and drove my clenched hand down to the putrid mass, tearing the mucus-heavy film of the exposed tide pool womb. The ear-piercing wailing that followed, a sound beyond mortal comprehension, a deep, intangible guttural howling, stirred from the very heart of the vast trenches lining the sea floor. This harrowing aquatic choir split my eardrums into a series of deep, irreparable fractures, the mangled stumps gushing cerebral spinal fluid, plunging me into a blackout state of slumber for which I nearly failed to wake. I woke 2 weeks later, blurred visioned and head covered in a thick layer of stained bandages. As I sat on the edge of the rickety, wooden hospital bed, coughing handfuls of red mucus onto my sweat-drenched palms, I whispered a small prayer. Mortals such as I were never meant to witness the unspoken act of the Fae. Our brittle human comprehension struggles to fathom the murmurs of the metaphysical, how we shy away from the knowledge we are not alone. I read of this as an eyewitness to the extraordinary, a mere passenger to life's mysteries. Document this enigma in your weeded tomes. Allow me the respite of expunging these memories. May this find you well. Wilbur Wen. Okay, we got 2 more. Vincent, my boy, forgive the speckles of vomit that line these pages. How I wish I could purge the eyes of the unimaginable horrors I've seen. I've traveled the far corners of this earth, witnessing spectacles beyond comprehension and wonder. However, this curiosity has always pulled me onward towards unfound knowledge. Has become my very undoing. As I scribble these letters, 3 sleepless weeks of mine weigh heavy on my being. My mind falters. Hallucinogenic phantoms silently etch their ways into my ramshackle shelter, scuttling in the darkness at the far corners of my vision. They watch on as my heart palpitations worsen by the day. Insomnia has ravaged this body of mine. I fear that in time it will consume me. Of the countless lies and the bitter poison of fatherly neglect, I ask not forgiveness nor salvation. I can only beg of you not to follow in my footsteps and trust my words but this once. No matter what path your life takes you, you never, no matter how much it tempts you, nor calls you to the very core of your being, seek the tidal festival of Slatejaw Cove. 3 long weeks ago on the dawn of the new moon, stood upon the gray speckled sands of that shoreline I bore witness to the calling of the manatee. Never in my life have I seen such depravity as I saw that night, staring into the sunken eyes of the local village folk. I saw only bloodlust, the harrowing cruelty of humanity laid bare, a sickening ballet of entrail-drenched cleavers, carving bone and skin from the waters, the piercing screams of gentle ocean giants, choking on the final droplets of lifeblood as they sank slowly into the frozen depths, the agony of the ocean death rattle, clamoring in desperation as the uncaring hands of our kin relentlessly tore countless fearful beings into a mangled pulp tapestry of flesh. The hour spiraling on, and a carousel of blades plunging into the darkness of the ice-salt water. Crudely emerging, dripping in unthinkable shades, the sand stained with a thick, clotted crimson of senseless aquatic butchery. In the chaos, I watched as the young calves were crushed against the jagged rocks by their fleeting mothers, only for the cold steel to fall upon their spines and steal their life from their fearful eyes. I wept into the bitter tides, both shaken and deeply broken, as I gazed upon the euphoric malice plastered onto the faces of the village folk, quivering in disbelief as the cheerful hymns of humanity echoed back upon the rock formations. The sickening irony of such harmonies curdling my stomach as I vacantly drew my eyes toward the fractured line of decimated bodies spanning the vast length of the coastline. Silent pleads for the mercy frozen on the lifeless faces of the manatee. Dear Lord, forsaken us wretched beings. We deserve not your forgiveness nor salvation. We are but the makers of our own hell, cursing this world with our own infinite cruelty. Alright, one letter left. Reader, I'm sure by now you're well aware of the societal depravity of mundanity, the willful, callous disregard for one another as we cast life after life into the infinite molten inferno of death. As the fluid lung epidemic swept our nation, engulfing the plethora of norms we hold precious, we held strong, bolting our doors to protect our fellow kin. Here it was within the smoldering grasp of isolation. A small part of us began to decay. Our compassion, the baseline empathy we hold for human life, as a rotten husk swirling the grim void of boundless self-serving disregard. With the epidemic still raging, we threw our doors once more, cackling our freedoms as we covered our eyes to the needless desolation. Amassing the streets, we burned our masks and leant forth to inhale the spittle-laced plumes of community lung juice. Have a good night, Kami. Sorry, it's been a very, you didn't yell me, but oh, you didn't tell you, but you're not funnier than 24. Alright. Retching whilst we sputtered infected matter into the faces of the vulnerable. Yeah, no, it's just been a very, the games tonight have been very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very, wordy in some senses. They're very kind of to the depths of a bit of madness, I guess. Like this one is very Eldrick. Sputtering infected matter into the faces of the vulnerable, shrieking to the heavens for normality. Let the weak shield, lock them from within the dark confines of their home and watch isolation consume them. We have lives to live and will willingly trample 100,000 beings and corpses for the sweet embrace of everyday mundanity. Is it not our duty to protect those in need? To a society so bent on capitalistic pride-stricken gluttony, acts of charity are but a passive deed. The mere semblance of personal inconvenience in the mask slips. Our petty routines are more valuable than the mere right to existence. The bleak shrines to habitual continuity, riddled with the broken bodies and crudely perforated organs of the unlucky, vulnerable masses, hidden from view, sacrificial lambs to the cause, their slow, agonizing demises so distant they seem. As though a number secreted by news anchors, families ripped apart for mere shopping outings. Chit-chats and jogs. How inconceivable the notion of marrying a mask. How absurd the act of giving others distance. Assume the unaware mallet. Let me see when this game was made. Okay. Recently. It's like I'm seeing some COVID parallels, but it is recent, so it makes sense. Assume the unaware malice of the unaffected and let them drop like flies for the heartless ego of the masses. Okay, that's a bit much. Okay, that freaking thing caught me off guard. Oh, we can click on it. Okay. Jesus Christ. All right, that's the developer, Shallow Lagoon.